startups? Usually we associate this term with new developments, offering something new to markets like new products, new services. We associate this term with success stories, people like Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, or Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba and other services, were both startup founders, as many others. But what should startups and their teams do in order to become successful? What things should they know? What things should they learn before starting a new business? In this course, my colleagues and I will discuss such important topics as fundraising for startups, business modeling, marketing and promotion in startups, investment analysis, and many other crucial topics that each startup need to learn, need to know in order to avoid difficulties and be successful in real life, in the real market. So let's start. We begin by asking a simple question. What is a startup? Well, this term comes from an English term to start up, which means to begin something. So startup is basically a beginning of something new, a new business, a new enterprise, new project. There are many different definitions of this term startup. I'll start with the definition given by Eric Ries in his book Lean Startup. Eric Ries, in his book The Lean Startup, defines startups as a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So you see that startup need not to be a business in form of a firm or an organization. It can be a project inside a big company. It can be a non-profit organization. The crucial thing is that we begin something new. We want to do something new, and conditions of certainty, that's the crucial point. So if we just copy an existing business, it's not a startup. If I want to open a cafeteria or any other business that already exists in the real life and I just make something simple, something similar, then it's not a startup. Thinking about the ideas of uncertainty as a crucial point for startups, it's helpful to use what is called a Canevin framework. Let's look at it in greater detail. Canevin framework was proposed by David Snowden in 1999 and then developed by him and other authors in following works. The term Canevin comes from the Welsh and it means the area of habitation, so description of all the things that surround us, that are all around us. Canevin framework is used to classify all the situations that we can face in real life into 5 categories. First 2 categories, simple and complicated, are ordered categories. In these 2 situations, the cause and effect relationships are clear and more or less known. Simple context is also called the domain of best practice. So in these situations, we need to sense what's going on, then categorize the situation into one or another group, and then make a response in the way that is most usual in such types of situations. A good example can be making a resume or CV. In this case, in order to make a resume, we just take the best practices, look at them, and use them in order to make a good document. Compared to simple situations, complicated situations require the application of expertise. A good example can be making a business plan. There are some good practices, but at the same time, we need experts in order to make good estimations of risks, of market demand, and so on and so forth. In complicated situations, we sense the situations, then we analyze what's going on, and only then we respond to the situation. Usually, existing companies that operate for many years face simple or complicated contexts. In these situations, in many cases, command and control ways of management can be applied and can be successful. Compared to these two situations, other two complex and chaotic situations are unordered. There are no clear, understandable cause and effect relationships. So we need to operate in these situations differently. Complex context or situation, it's usually called the domain of emergence. In these complex situations, we understand what happened, the reasons why things happened, only in retrospect. So we understand why this happened, but it doesn't help us to predict what will happen in the future. At the same time, there can emerge some patterns that we can analyze and use to understand where things can develop. So when managers, when startup founders face complex situations, they can apply some simple tests. They can make some small experiments, safe experiments preferably, in order to understand what patterns emerge and then work with them respectively. Chaotic context is the domain of rapid response. In chaotic context, there are a lot of unknownables, so we need to act in order to understand what's going on, feel what will happen, and only then plan some response. The usual way to operate in chaotic context is to understand some patterns, some cause and effect relationships, and move the situation from chaotic to a complex one. And the fifth situation, disorder, is a situation when we don't understand what's going on. Usually it's when the situation is absolutely new for us. So the best way to operate in disorder is to divide the situation into separate parts that can be categorized as other four types of situations and work with them separately. So to sum up, why do we need Canadian framework for startups? The first use is just to understand that startups are different from other well-established firms, other well-established businesses. And the crucial difference is that startups are usually in the domain of complex situations, domain of emergence, compared to existing businesses that usually operate in complicated or simple situations. So it means that startups should find the patterns. Startups should be ready for some experiments in order to understand what is the right way for them to move forward, to do things, and only then they can come to a success. What other definitions of startups can we give? I personally like very much the definition that was given by Steve Blank and Bob Durf in their Startup Owner's Manual Strategy Guide. Blank and Durf define startup as a temporary organization in search of a scalable, repeatable, profitable business model. Blank and Durf emphasize other specific features of startups. They say that it's temporary organization, so any new enterprise can be a startup only in the beginning until it will reach some specific end in the form of the end of a project or maybe move to existence as an established business. And another very important feature is that they say that the crucial for a startup is to establish a business model that will make the success repeatable, a business model that will allow startup to scale its operations, and a business model that will generate profit on a repeatable basis. This brings us to a very good question. What is a business model? Henry Chesbrough described business model as a model that defines a series of activities from raw materials through to the final consumer that will yield a new product or service with the value being added throughout the various activities. So the crucial point is the value added, the value that we create and then deliver to the final consumer on the market. Business model should capture this value, and in order to do this, we should think about unique resources, unique assets or position, and the series of activities that we need to make in order to be successful and to enjoy a competitive advantage. Another way to think about business model, which of course is close to the view of Henry Chesbrough, is the point of view of Osterweiler and Pinier. In their book, Business Model Generation, they propose the following definition. They define a business model as describing the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. So again, they focus on the value creation process. But what's important is not only value, but what should we know in order to create this value in the right way. Let's look at the business model triangle, magic triangle, that was proposed by Gassman, Frankenberger, and Schick in their book. These three authors analyzed business models of many companies and proposed 55 different business model templates that can be applied in order to create new business models. So, in their proposal, they offer us the following scheme: a triangle model with 4 basic questions, answering which we can establish a new business model. In the center of a business model, they pose a question: who? Who is the target customer or customer segment for our business, for our startup? When we define our customer segment, we can answer 3 other questions. In the top, the question what? What do the startups offer to the customer? This is the question that should define the value proposition for our customer or for our customer segment. When we have understood the value proposition, we can move to the right angle to the question how. How is the value proposition created? So it basically is a description of a value chain, all the activities, all the resources that we need to manage in order to offer the value proposition to the customer segments. And the 4th question is value. How is the revenue created? So it's a description of the revenue model. In which way are we going to make customers pay for the value, how they will pay to us, maybe who will pay for a value. It's not always so that those who consume the products pay by themselves. Sometimes some other parties may pay. So basically answering all these 4 questions, startups can move to understanding of the basic elements of their business model. In next section, we are going to discuss in greater detail business models business models creation for startups, and we'll look at business models in greater detail in terms of the elements, number of elements. And we'll use the not 4 elements, not 4 question model, but a more complicated 9 element model, which we'll call Canvas business model.